Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Art of Leading, Captivating Leadership Narratives, all part of the stuff that growth is made of. I'm excited to introduce you to Orin Knopp, founder and president of Presentation Products, and one of my Vistage CEO Peer Advisory Group members. Thank you, Orin, for agreeing to join me today.
You're welcome, Margaret. Good morning.
Good morning. I am a huge fan and admire your thoughtful leadership and your laser focus approach on accountability and effectiveness that you bring to your organization. So I'd love to start with having you provide an overview of Presentation Products. What do you all do, and who is your target audience?
Sure. Well, the name of the company is Presentation Products. As a company, we are a design build audiovisual systems integration company. And what that means is that we work with companies and entities in the corporate, higher ed, and government areas to help them build systems and processes to enhance their communications and presentation abilities within the organizations.
Great. And Orin, could you share a little bit about your career journey and how you got to your current leadership role and founding, I guess, of the company?
Well, it's been a long journey. I don't feel like there was no other path for me than to own my own business. My father was an immigrant, and growing up, he instilled in my brothers and I that the only option was to be in control of your own destiny, which was to own your own business. I started my career in the early '80s as a public accountant, working for Richard Eisner, Edward Isaacs and Company here in New York City. I spent a number of years in the audit, tax, and eventually the management information systems area of the company. In the late '80s, I had a chance through accounting to see a lot of different small businesses, and I thought I was ready to, at that point, move on and start my own business. So I bought a franchise operation. It was the franchise operation was called PCR, Personal Computer Rentals, and it was a franchise system that focused on renting computers and audiovisual equipment for meetings, trade shows, and conventions. Very quickly, I grew the New York City office to the largest of the franchisees in the country. Then I opened up additional offices in Westchester, Connecticut, Philadelphia, and Pittsburgh. By the, I would say, early '90s, I was struggling to run a pretty significant growing business, and I joined something called the Executive Committee, which was the predecessor to Vistage today. The group really helped me learn and build and grow as a business owner and, as a company. We had a speaker early, I would probably say about early '90s, '92 and '93, called, his name was Gordon Tunstall. And his focus at the meeting was about how you can combine companies to create greater value as a combined entity than they could be individually. And I hired him, and together, through my knowledge in what I learned through the executive committee and the speaker and the facilitator of the group at that point, I raised capital, and in the mid '90s, hired Dean Ritter, Smith Barney, Arthur Anderson, spent a couple of $1 million in doing a simultaneous roll-up and IPO of the entire franchise system. So we bought the franchisor, and we rolled up 50 of the franchisees into one entity and tried to take the company public. I eventually sold the entire operation privately in the same summer because it just worked out better. And then, spent the next couple of years just talking to shareholders and lawyers and accountants, and until I couldn't take it anymore, I wanted to be back in my own business. So late '90s, I started Presentation Products, and today we're a 100 some odd people working hard every day and providing hopeful value to our customers.
First of all, I don't think I knew that whole background. So that's fascinating. Thank you for sharing that with me. And, it's so interesting, the whole PCR and the franchise, and that you met Gordon through Vistage. That's so
Yeah.
interesting as a speaker. I never realized that.
Yeah. I mean, Vistage, well, Tech at the time, and
Tech was the predecessor name to Vistage, right?
And Vistage had, I'd been in and out of Vistage throughout the years, and I met a lot of great people and sat through a lot of great presentations. And if it wasn't for that peer group and that advisor group that I've been part of, we never would have been as successful as we are today.
Yeah, that's a great story.
It's been a great resource.
Yeah. Well, and you've been a great member since I've known you, so thank you for that. So, changing topics a little bit, if you were to go back in time, what advice would you give to your younger self?
I don't think we have enough time for me to tell you.
Pick one or two.
I remember. So I went to Pace University, downtown Manhattan, and Pace was famous for three things: you either a nursing student, an investment banker, or a public accountant. And those are the three things you went to Pace for. And I remember making that decision to go into accounting versus investment banking. And the only reason was because, I was young and I didn't understand what investment banking was. And, so I went home, I spoke to my father. He didn't know what it was either. So I went into something I understood.
Which makes sense.
Yeah. And, so one of the things were, while I think the path I chose and going to accounting and then eventually into my business was great, I often question whether I should have taken a different route and to go into investment banking. But so I'm not sure what that advice is outside of, don't take the road just because it's clearer. I think I should have spent a little bit more time investigating and understanding what that other path might have been. Maybe that's what the advice would be.
Yeah.
The other thing is, it took me a long time to understand that surrounding myself by people more intelligent than me was the right way to go. In the beginning and for many years, and still until recently, I very often focus on annual income versus building wealth and equity in the company. So I would hire down, and I did that primarily because I was more concerned about what the annual income was versus what the person can do to build wealth and value in a company. And it's only until recently that I realized that surround myself by people who are more intelligent than me, smarter than me, and can help build long-term value was the right play, not to focus on the short game, but focus on the long game.
That's great advice for everyone, and interesting and aha. So thank you for sharing that. So how did what were some of the challenges that you faced early in your early leadership roles, whether it was during the time with the franchises or as you created this current company you're at?
I think it comes back to the same advice I would give myself going back on. Delegation was certainly a challenge. And I think it's not that I had a problem with delegation, but it was more about it, probably an insecurity. I know that my people don't need me and they didn't need me then, but I don't want them to know they didn't need me, type thing. So I think getting over that and realize that you're, delegating not just helps myself, but it also helps them grow and be, their own professional careers by allowing, by allowing them to grow and do their job. And the only way that happens is by delegating responsibilities to those people. So I think that was probably my biggest hurdle and challenge to get over.
Orin, so how did you get over that? What were some of the things that you did that helped you get over that?
You run out of hours in the day. You can't do anything. You can't do everything. Realizing that you hit a ceiling as a company because you just don't have enough arms to do things. Um, um, Certainly being part of Vistage and tech at the time, and realizing how much wealth and knowledge there are in a room of professionals that helped. And I would say also reading. I'm always reading some type of business book, um, and those books really help to cement that understanding that you need to surround yourself with good people that you can delegate to.
It's so interesting. I think that's such a topic, and we've talked about it in our own group a few times in terms of members, especially business owners. When you have grown the business early on, it's your baby, and you're used to doing everything. And a really key piece to scaling is getting over that hump of being able to delegate, because if you can't, you're never going to be able to scale. But I think that's something that so many owners slash CEO presidents deal with and have to
Yeah,
focus on.
yeah, I think there's probably a million reasons for not delegating, right? A lot of us just we enjoy being in control. We're,
Yeah, yeah.
I
Well, it's
think
your baby too. It's also, you've got the most at stake. So,
right.
yeah, yeah. Well, good. Well, thanks for sharing that. So, yeah, the past few years have been very challenging for leaders and business owners. Whether COVID is, impacted you, the increase, the interest rates being so high, being part of kind of that real estate uh, component. Has I know impacted your company as well. So, what are some of the lessons you've learned or aha moments through some of these challenging times?
It's when I think back on at this point, I'm pushing 35 years of doing this, which is a long, just saying that is a lot. And
It's hard to imagine, right? It's like,
hard,
God, really? Yeah,
it's hard to imagine. And I think
yeah,
and we've been fortunate enough to grow as a company the entire time. And I think we had 9/11 was a terrible year. Um, 88 was a rough year, but it was a little blips, and I think, but in general, if you look at the curve, it was a nice, pretty curve over the years. And the last couple of years has just been like an EKG. It's like you just every time you
up
turn
and
around,
down.
yeah, feel like
Yeah,
you feel like one of those punching clowns that you're constantly getting knocked down, and you have to push yourself and get back up. I think one of the biggest challenges for me were, especially when we moved to a work from home environment, stop trying to manage the hours that people put in and manage the output that they produce. For when you're it's a mindset of, well, I'm paying people to work 40 hours a week. I expect them to work 40 hours a week. And that big challenge for me was, does it really matter if they're doing the job? And how, I don't care how they get it done. And if they can get it done in 35 because they're efficient, then who cares? So the biggest challenge, I think, was changing the mindset of not managing the hours but managing the output.
yeah. That's important, because you put a lot of energy into something that especially in this day and age when people are expecting that flexibility.
Right.
That's a lot of energy to put in something that maybe you have less control of. So that's a healthy way to look at it.
Yeah, and I think there are
So
challenges still associated with that. I think a
yeah,
lot of people hold on to their relationships and the knowledge and everything they built pre-COVID. It's the younger more inexperienced people that I'm more concerned about is how do you continue to build, that team, and how do you help people, build their careers, when they're not part of the in real life experience.
Yeah. Well, and it's also finding a different way to embed and have your employees experience the culture, right? The culture is so important whether you're in the office or not. And it's easier to do it when you're in the office, because you're touching and feeling people real time.
Yeah.
So I think that has been a bit of a challenge and something that people have had to um, change their mindset and their activities to figure out how to make that work. So,
Yeah, and you're right, Margaret. That's a current challenge today.
yeah,
Is what are we doing? What are we building? I mean, if is it just a job for people without culture? What is there? It's a paycheck,
yeah,
and they can get a paycheck anywhere. So that's one of our challenges today. Is
yeah.
still, I think, at least for me, is the continuing to build that sense of community,
Hmm.
and culture, and their emotional attachment and investment in building something greater than just a
It's a
paycheck.
purpose.
The
It's
purpose, yeah,
purpose and core values, right? And embedding it in all aspects of the employee and customer experience,
yeah,
right? So it's thinking a little differently because if they're not there, you got to find other ways to do that. Um,
right.
so yeah, interesting. So what would you say, Orin, is your biggest challenge and biggest opportunity right now?
Uh, the nature of a business relies on companies being back in the office. We build, we build spaces for people to work together as a team. And there's that fear that the whole work from home is going to, and the lower the impact on the commercial real estate market, that that the demand for what we do starts to go away. Interesting thing is we have not seen that. As a matter of fact, we're busier than we've ever been. Uh, and
Hmm.
we believe that is because companies who really care about communication amongst their team are still, they also want to have people back in the office because they realize that that's where they're getting more productivity, that's where they're getting more collaboration, and they're spending more money now to create these in spaces that attract people back to the office. So it's funny, the work from home, in my mind, is both a challenge and an opportunity for us, right? It's a challenge internally, and I think it's a fear, for the market decreasing, but it's an opportunity for customers to relook at their spaces and spend money to attract their people back into the office at the same time.
Yeah, yeah. So it's not necessarily, well, it could be new space or it's redoing the space they have
You
to
got it.
make it more attractive, right? To make it more, I think about even working at Ernst and Young, one of the new locations, a much more open. I mean, it really was a lovely place where you could sit in a variety of places, still use the technology, which is what you're offering, and that wonderful experience, but really a lot of different places where you could work that's comfortable and more flexible. So
Yeah,
interesting.
absolutely.
So I've just got a few more questions, but how do you measure success as a leader?
There's quantifiable and there's qualitative, right? I mean, the quantifiable is easy. The um, building value in the company is one of the ways I measure it quantifiably. Naturally, like many business owners, eventually I have to think about the exit, and having a meaningful exit is a way I can look back on my career and know that I was able to build something that somebody else saw value in. So from a quantifiable standpoint, for me at this point in my career, that's what I look at is, will somebody eventually see value in what I've spent the last 35, 40 years of my life doing? From a qualitative standpoint, is which is why I like people back in the office. I I see people who have started here in their 20s who now have families, and homes and careers, and they've grown up here, and they're amazing professionals, and that's how I look at the non-quantifiable things. Is I look at the community around me, and I see how much they've grown. And
Yeah. I think it's such a great sentiment, especially as a business owner, when you're providing, these opportunities because of this business you built. But
yeah,
an important thing, regardless of whether you're a business owner or a leader, to help give people opportunities. So thanks
yeah,
for sharing that.
yeah, and we couldn't be who we are without them.
Yeah. So, I know you mentioned before, I know you're an avid reader. I know you also listen to books as you're traveling or exercising. What are you reading right now?
Uh, I'm in the middle from a business side versus a personal side. I'm the book that's on my desk right now is called Risk Management, and it's about that big. A lot of dry reading in it, but it's
Sounds
really
like
about,
it.
yeah. But it's about protecting what protecting what we've built as a company, and making
Yeah,
sure that we don't get blindsided
yeah.
because we're successful in one area and that area goes away. Um, the other book I'm reading, I just started also, is called Moneyland, and it's just about the money throughout the world and the oligarchs, and every from all the wars and how people got rich, and from through the wars and stealing money and the Swiss bank accounts and everything else. And it's I'm only I think 2 chapters in, and it's been an interesting journey. I've learned a lot of just about the Swiss bank system. So
Interesting.
yeah, I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah.
Historically, I've read so many. When I think about some of the books that stand out, Crossing the Chasm, I read a long time ago. I think it's Geoffrey Moore, not sure how you pronounce his first name. And it was all about selling, disruptive technology to consumers, and what that chasm looks like. I read that a long time ago. It was a great book. And the other book that I read very early on was The Road Ahead by Bill Gates, and was probably this is back in the, my God, it was probably when I started PCR. Probably early, I would say early to mid '90s. I read it, and it was just a great, great, great book. By certainly somebody who changed the future.
Oh, absolutely. And continues to,
Yeah.
with all the stuff he's trying to do in medicine and everything like that. So,
Right.
oh, those are good ones. I'm going to have to read those. I'm not sure about the risk management, although risk management's really important. But the other ones sound really interesting. Good. Well, thanks for sharing that. So, my last question is, what would you say, Orin, are the critical success factors or secret sauce, if you will, of being an effective leader today?
Uh, I would say for me, it's the same thing that the first day on my job out of college, working in public accounting. So it's exactly the same it was back then as it is today. It, I was a junior accountant coming in, and I was with the partner and the client, and we were walking into the president's office at the client, and the partner turned to me and said, "You have 2 ears and one mouth. Use them in proportion." And that stuck with me, And today I listen more than I speak, and I think that's that's probably the most important thing you can do as a leader is you don't know everything. Um, you you really need to listen to people and hear them, and don't think about a response when they're talking. So you truly do learn from everybody around you.
I love that. Two ears and one mouth. Use that in proportion. That's a great saying. And you're right. Really listen, right? There's sometimes we think we're listening, but we're not totally focused. So thank you for that great advice.
You're
But
welcome.
thank you for sharing your thoughtful insights around the art of leading, Orin. And thank you all for listening. This is the stuff that growth is made of.